Breastfeeding can take a bit of time to get established, and even after those sometimes difficult first few days, little problems can still arise. Almost all of them can be overcome though, and these are some of the most commonly asked questions. Your breast milk looks thin and a different colour to bottle milk. Well, the answer is there are always a great variation in the colour and the consistency of breast milk, and unlike cow's milk, the cream comes at the end, not at the beginning, although with stored breast milk the fat does separate to the top. The fore milk is watery and thirst quenching for the baby and therefore looks a bit watery and bluish. The hind milk, however, which comes after, is thicker and can be anything from creamy white to dark yellowish. Your baby doesn't mind though. As far as your baby's concerned, it's all good. What about if your nipples are really sore? It's very common at first for your nipples to be a little uncomfortable when the baby starts to suck at the beginning of the feed. But when the milk begins to flow really well, that discomfort stops unless the position of the baby is wrong. Look at our section on latching on to find out what that position should exactly be. What if your nipples are actually cracked and painful? Well, again, if your baby is in the right position, feeding shouldn't hurt. So check that your baby is latching on properly. Get help if you need it, because once your baby is positioned correctly, those cracks should heal up rapidly. Keep your nipples clean and dry, but avoid soap which can dry the skin too much. Change your breast pads frequently, wear a cotton bra, and try sleeping topless with just a towel to mop up any leaks. Check that there's no thrush in your baby's mouth, as this could sometimes be a cause of sore nipples. It would be small, white patches in the baby's mouth which don't wipe away easily. If you see it, talk to your doctor about treatment. Another question: what if your breasts become very swollen and hard and painful when you start to breastfeed? How can I stop that happening? In the early days after birth, mothers may experience engorgement or swollen breasts. This is a temporary condition that can make breastfeeding difficult and uncomfortable. With engorgement, a mother can also find that her skin has stretched so much that her nipples, which would normally be protruding, may be flat. Flat nipples may make it difficult for your baby to breastfeed easily. In order for your baby to breastfeed effectively, you must be able to take a large mouthful of breast and stretch the nipple forwards and upwards against the roof of his mouth. If your baby is unable to get a flat nipple position correctly in his mouth, he may not receive as much breast milk despite his best efforts. In these circumstances, it's important for you to be able to gently draw out the nipple so that your baby can properly grasp the nipple and areola in order to establish a good latch. For women who experience flat nipples, companies such as Lancino have developed simple products to temporarily draw out the nipple to enable a good latch, the first step to successful breastfeeding. Current recommendations for addressing temporarily flat nipples include using a manual or electric breast pump, and some practitioners even use a cut-off syringe. These methods can be cumbersome and time-consuming, valuable time that's taken away from your baby. What about a single hard, painful lump in the breast? Well, that's probably milk which has accumulated because one of the milk ducts is blocked or isn't being emptied properly. Check that your bra isn't too tight and give the baby a good feed from that blocked breast, smoothing the milk away from the blockage towards the nipple as he or she does. What if your breast is red hot and painful in one area and you feel unwell? Well, that's mastitis. You don't need to stop feeding. In fact, you need to keep feeding to keep the milk flowing. Do what you would do for engorged breasts and blocked ducts. Get lots of rest, keep the bra off, especially at night, and ask your doctor about the need for any antibiotics. Breastfeeding with mastitis won't do your baby any harm whatsoever. Another question is, won't breastfeeding my baby on demand exhaust me? Well, when your baby's hungry, your baby will let you know, and your breast will get to know how much your baby needs and when, and will supply the amount of milk that he needs. However, it's a two-way thing. If your breasts feel full, then you need to feed, and you can encourage your baby to feed then, as you would usually. In fact, if you skip a feed or go too long between them, you can get engorged, so you don't need to wait until he asks every time. Or you could express off some breast milk to feel more comfortable. My baby takes over an hour to feed sometimes. Why so long? At first, both you and your baby are learning, so it can take longer. If your baby is small or has been ill, it can also take longer. Usually, however, it's because the baby isn't positioned quite correctly, and some adjustments can make all the difference. Finally, how do you get your baby into a regular feeding routine if you need to? Once your baby is a well-established breastfeeder, make the spaces between feeds gradually longer and try to keep him or her awake longer during the feed so that they can take more. Whatever the problem you have with breastfeeding, and there may be a few, always talk to your midwife or breastfeeding counsellor for useful, practical advice that works.